Ladies and gentlemen, today we will start our lecture with a question. Have you ever noticed the signs the universe has given you from birth until now? Signs like when you're living a moment and suddenly realize, I've seen this before. Isn't that a sign from the universe? Today is July 20, 1951, and let's begin our lecture on the signs that assure you your desires are on their way to being fulfilled. You have seen them, the signs, though you may not have known what you were looking at. A conversation overheard that matched a silent desire of your heart. An article that appeared on your screen as if placed there by unseen hands. A person you haven't thought of in years suddenly appears in your life with an opportunity. You dismiss these things as chance, as random happenings in a disordered world, but there is no chance. Nothing is random. Every detail in your outer world is a reflection of a movement in your inner being. When the signs arrive, they are not mere suggestions. They are confirmations that you have already moved in consciousness. But because you do not trust what you do not understand, you ignore the gentle voice and cling instead to the loud voice of reason. Signs are not separate from the manifestation. They are the manifestation in embryonic form. Just as the budding of a seed beneath the soil gives no outward evidence to the eye, so too do the early signs go unnoticed by the mind, trained only to respond to the five senses. But your senses were never the instruments of truth. The moment you imagined yourself differently, wealthier, freer, powerful, you created a new trajectory. The world began reshaping itself to conform to your new assumption. And yet, because the full picture did not appear at once, you judged the process incomplete. You returned to the old assumption, and in doing so, you interfered with the law. The outer world is slow to catch up, but that delay is not denial. The signs appear first as patterns, as impressions, as changes in emotion and atmosphere. Your dreams begin to shift. Your responses to life grow calmer, more centered, even though the outer facts have not changed. You feel a subtle joy, as though something wonderful is near, though nothing on your calendar says so. These are the first indications that you have entered a new state, the state of your desire. To ignore these signs is to ignore your own creation. Many fail to manifest, not because they did not imagine, but because they did not recognize when imagination had already set things in motion. They prayed, they affirmed, they visualized, and then when the first ripple appeared, they called it a coincidence. When the universe knocked softly on the door, they asked for proof. And in doing so, they reaffirmed the old belief that they were still waiting. You are never waiting. You are either assuming the state of the wish fulfilled, or you are assuming its absence. And the signs reflect whichever state you are most loyal to. Those who are wise observe the smallest shift, a message, a number, a word spoken at the right moment. They take it seriously, not because the sign itself has power, but because it signals the inner work is already unfolding. The rich man within has awakened. The millionaire consciousness has been accepted. It is only a matter of time before the outer must bow and conform. For what you are in consciousness must outpicture itself in form. Do not seek signs, that is to affirm they are not already present. Rather, live in the knowing that your assumption has already created the unseen bridge of incidents that leads you to its fulfillment. The signs will come as reassurance, not evidence to convince you. If you need convincing, you are not yet living in the end. The one who assumes wealth does not look for proof that wealth is coming. He walks, speaks, and lives as one who has already received. And in that state, the signs simply flow, unforced, unexpected, unmistakable. You will hear a story that sounds too much like yours to ignore. A stranger will describe their success in a way that mirrors your own imagined outcome. Your body will respond with chills, with resonance, with an inner thrill that is not emotion alone. It is recognition. You are witnessing the outer reflection of an inner act. And in those moments, you are invited to remain faithful to that act. Do not step out of it by saying, well, that's interesting, but it's not mine yet. It is yours, or it would not have found you. Signs are not rewards, they are results, and they follow obedience to the law, not the law of effort or striving, but the law of assumption. Once you assume something to be true, truly, deeply, naturally, the world has no choice but to rearrange itself. You may think it's all happening outside of you, but the real work has already been done in secret, in the chamber of imagination, where all things are conceived. If you understood the process, you would never again doubt the signs. You would treat each one as a sacred echo from your future, a love letter from the version of you that already exists in the state of abundance. And as these signs accumulate, gentle at first, then louder, your only task is to remain. Remain in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Remain in the knowing that you have already become what you once longed for. For if you do, then nothing can stop the full harvest from appearing. So be not surprised when the world begins to whisper to you in the language of symbols. Be not skeptical when the old you says, it's just your imagination. For it is your imagination. And that is the highest truth there is. The signs are not separate from the thing you desire. They are the first fruits of the seed you planted. Honor them, respond to them, live as though they matter, and they will multiply into the full form you seek. You have already moved. Now you must walk. The world has taught you that effort equals result. It has instructed you from youth that to have anything, you must toil, strive, compete, and exhaust yourself. But that world, with all its machinery and calculation, knows little of true creation. Creation does not begin with effort, it begins with assumption. A silent inner knowing that what you desire already exists and is yours, not as a concept, not as a possibility, but as a fact in consciousness. You may lift a finger or take 1,000 actions, but if those actions spring from a state of lack, they only perpetuate that state. The one who truly creates does so first in stillness, by being the thing they seek, not chasing it. To assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled is to step into the end, to feel now what you would feel if your desire were already realized. That feeling is not a fantasy, it is a creative act. The world you see around you is only the hardened shadow of past feelings. You felt unworthy, so life mirrored it. You felt unseen, so the world overlooked you. You felt wealth, even for a moment, and something shifted. You do not need to know how. You only need to enter the state and remain there long enough for the outer to bend. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is not a ritual. It is not repeated affirmation spoken with strained belief. It is quiet and certain. It is an inner agreement with the unseen that says, this is mine. Not because you earned it, not because someone approved of you, but because you dared to claim it. The moment you feel yourself already in possession of your desire, be it wealth, health, love, or freedom, the law is activated. A new pattern begins to unfold. You may not see it with your eyes, but life begins reshaping itself in subtle and perfect ways to reflect your new inner state. Many miss this truth because they confuse movement with progress. They think if they are busy enough, loud enough, persistent enough, the world will reward them. But the only movement that matters is the movement of awareness. To shift from I want to I am. The one who wants waits. The one who is receives. It is not arrogance to assume something boldly. It is the highest obedience to the law of creation. You are not here to hope. You are here to become. And you become by assuming. You may say, but I don't feel it. How can I assume something I cannot believe? And the answer is this. You do not need belief to begin. You need willingness. You must be willing to suspend your disbelief just long enough to feel something new. Feel it as you would a memory, not with strength, but with familiarity. What would it feel like if your bank account overflowed, if your business soared, if money came to you freely and without effort? What would your mornings be like? What would your tone sound like when you spoke to others? What would you no longer worry about? You do not need to convince the world. You only need to convince yourself. And even that does not require force. It requires surrender. Surrender to the feeling that it is done. Act not to make it happen, but because it has already happened. That action is effortless. That life is natural. When you dwell in the state of the wish fulfilled, your thoughts align, your emotions stabilize, your body relaxes. You no longer look for signs. You no longer ask when. You walk as one who already knows. And from that knowing, the bridge of incidents unfolds perfectly, precisely, inevitably. Imagination is the only creative power, and its language is feeling. If you cannot feel it, you cannot bring it forth. Not because you are punished, but because the outer cannot outpicture what the inner has not embraced. Feel the joy of wealth. Feel the lightness of freedom. Do it in silence. Do it in secret. That feeling becomes your new atmosphere, and life cannot help but conform. You do not need the world to give you permission. You only need to assume your right to be what you desire. The law is impersonal. It does not ask if you are worthy. It responds to your inner state. Change the state, and the world must follow. And so the question is not what should I do? The question is what must I feel? What must I assume to be true right now before my senses agree? Because once your senses agree, it is no longer creation. It is only observation. The creative act is in the invisible. The real effort is in assuming the feeling and staying there. The old man within will protest. He will say it is foolish, unrealistic, wasteful. But that voice speaks only from memory, from the past. You are not bound to that past unless you cling to it. The moment you dare to feel something greater, you break the chain, and the world must respond. You are not here to chase shadows. You are here to give form to light. And that light is the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Assume it, rest in it, trust it, and let the outer reveal what you have already created in the unseen. The world you behold is not an independent reality pressing itself upon you. It is a mirror, faithfully reflecting the content of your inner state. You may desire abundance, love, or recognition, and yet experience scarcity, rejection, or invisibility. This does not mean that the universe denies your desire. It simply means you have not assumed the state in which that desire is already fulfilled. The mirror does not show you what you want. It shows you what you are, not in flesh or name, but in consciousness. There is no power outside of your awareness. You do not experience life as it is, but as you are. If your dominant assumption is that money is difficult, that love is elusive, or that success is reserved for others, your world will faithfully display these convictions, not because it is cruel, but because it is obedient. Your outer circumstances are not random. They are ordered responses to the vibrations of your inner world, and those vibrations are determined by what you habitually assume to be true. To understand this is to reclaim your authority. You do not need to change the world. You need only change your consciousness of the world. If you assume that you are wealthy, not will be, but already are, and persist in that assumption, then reality, though it may protest for a time, must eventually conform. It must. For the law is unwavering. What you are conscious of being determines what you will see. Desire alone has no creative force. The world is filled with those who desire and yet receive nothing. They wish, they beg, they hope, but they do not assume. The one who assumes says quietly within himself, I am it, not someday, but now. This is not fantasy, it is law. To assume a state is to move into it and dwell there mentally, emotionally, imaginatively, and when that state becomes your dwelling place, life has no choice but to make it visible. Consider for a moment how easily you have assumed things you did not want. You assumed that you were not chosen, and so you were overlooked. You assumed that you never have enough, and so you experience lack. These were not curses. They were manifestations of unconscious assumptions. The law is impersonal. It reflects the content, not the morality of your inner speech. So if you say to yourself, I always struggle, and do so with feeling, that assumption becomes your world. To shift this, you must become aware of what you are assuming now, not what you claim, but what you actually feel to be true. You may say, I desire abundance, but feel fear every time you look at your finances. That feeling is your true assumption, and that assumption governs your reality. You are not punished for it, only mirrored. Change the feeling and you change the outcome, not through effort, but through awareness. The dominant state is not a fleeting thought. It is a settled feeling. It is the mood you return to again and again, consciously or not. It is the baseline from which your thoughts arise and your actions flow. If your dominant state is one of security and abundance, the world will begin to bring you the people, opportunities, and circumstances that match that tone. Not because you chase them, but because you match them in consciousness. Many wait for the outer to shift before they dare to feel different. They say, when I see it, I will believe it. But this is to invert the law. You see what you believe. You experience what you assume. If you are willing to believe without evidence, to walk in the assumption before the facts appear, then the facts must follow. This is not wishful thinking. This is creation. You are never creating out of nothing. You are selecting from an infinite field of potential that responds only to your state of being. Even when nothing appears to change, everything is changing if you have changed your inner state. The world may seem still for a time, but do not be deceived. The roots of the new assumption are growing below the surface. Persist. Remain faithful to the new identity you have claimed. If you have assumed yourself to be a millionaire, then feel the security, the freedom, the composure that such a state brings. Do not wait for the outer to confirm it. Let your inner world be the only evidence you require. And when the world begins to echo your new state with small signs, with subtle shifts, with unexpected encounters, receive them not as surprises, but as natural outworkings of your decision. For every decision to assume a state is a decision to let go of the old. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot dwell in lack and abundance at once. Choose this day whom you will serve, your fear or your fulfillment. The mirror is always faithful. It may delay, but it never lies. What you see around you is nothing more than the slow crystallization of what you have accepted within. So be mindful not only of your thoughts, but of your assumptions. For it is not what you think once that matters. It is what you feel consistently to be true. That is the builder of worlds. That is the source of all experience. And once mastered, it will never fail you. There is a moment in every creative process when the signs appear. Subtle, often quiet, sometimes dismissed, but always present. These signs are not to tease you, not to test you, but to inform you that you have already moved in consciousness. The desire you held in silence, the imaginal act you repeated in faith, has taken root, and the world, ever obedient, has begun to reflect that movement back to you. But here lies the great mistake so many make. They see the signs, feel the resonance, witness the echoes of their inner creation, and do nothing with it. They observe the sign as if it were separate, as if it were merely coincidence or suggestion. But it is not a suggestion. It is an invitation. It is a call to dwell in the state from which the sign arose. The law is precise. It does not give you fragments without foundation. When a sign shows up in your world, it does so because you have already entered the state from which it could be born. The dream, the number, the conversation, the opportunity, these are not precursors to the state. They are reflections of it. They reveal that you have touched the reality of your desire. But if you treat these signs merely as encouragement and return to waiting, you suspend the manifestation. You stretch the process, not because the outer world needs more time, but because your inner world has not remained faithful. The signs demand response, not just recognition. When the sign appears, your work is not to question it or analyze it, but to assume more deeply the reality it confirms. To say within yourself, it is done, not it will come. No, maybe this means I'm close. No, the correct response is to live now from the state that the sign is pointing toward. That is how manifestation is completed. Not by chasing more signs, but by anchoring the consciousness from which they were born. But what often happens is this: the sign appears, the heart stirs, and the mind interferes. Doubt arises. Could it really mean something? What if I'm imagining it? I don't want to get my hopes up. And so the feeling subsides, the state is abandoned, and a bridge that was forming between the invisible and the visible is broken, not because it failed, but because the traveler turned back. You cannot touch a new state and then retreat into the old and expect the world to change. The sign is only effective if it leads you into full assumption, if it reminds you to stay where you already belong. When you receive a sign, perhaps someone speaks of the very business you imagined, or you see the exact car you visualized drive past you, or you feel a surge of peace during your inner work. You are being shown what is already done in the unseen. But most people want to see the full result before they act. They say, once I get the money, then I'll feel wealthy. But the money cannot come until the state is felt first. The sign is a glimpse of alignment. It is a whisper from your higher self saying, keep going, remain here, don't look back. If you receive the sign but stay in doubt, you are like a man who sees a seed sprout and then walks away, claiming the harvest is uncertain. What is required is loyalty to the end. The sign is proof that you've stepped into the current. But you must not step out again by judging the current as insufficient. You cannot ask for more signs as a condition for belief. Every time you do, you plant a new seed of waiting. Instead, take the sign as evidence that you have already arrived, not physically, but in consciousness. The moment you accept this, the outer must move. So when a sign comes, ask yourself, what state within me does this confirm? And then intensify that state. Feel it more deeply. Speak from it, walk from it, make decisions as one who already possesses it. Do not speak of becoming, speak only from being. You're no longer on the path, you are now the person who lives in the result. The sign showed you that. The only thing that delays it now is hesitation to remain in that state. You must understand that signs do not cause the manifestation, they accompany it. They arise in tandem with your assumption. They are like the early morning light that precedes the full rising sun. You would not see a pink sky and say, there may be no sunrise today. Yet many do exactly that with manifestation. They see the signs, then doubt their meaning. And in that doubt, they return to the old self, the self that has not received, a self that questions and delays. Open your mind. That's what the manifestation brings, that you experience. To bring forth your desire, you must become one with it in feeling. And the signs that come are there to remind you that this unity has already begun. But unless you respond to them by deepening your assumption, they remain as echoes, beautiful, promising, but powerless. The moment you honor a sign by acting from the state it confirms, you collapse time. You quicken the process. You move as though the unseen is more real than the seen. And in doing so, you bring the seen into alignment. You are not meant to watch for signs like a beggar watches for scraps. You are meant to recognize them as the outpicturing of your inner world. If they appear, it is because you have already changed. Let the sign be your permission to remain changed. Let it be your instruction to continue from the new place. And as you do, the fullness of your desire, already existing in the unseen, must take form before your eyes, not because of luck or struggle, but because you remained faithful to the reality the sign revealed.